All right, listeners, welcome back to Thinking Outside the Human. Ready to fire up those neural networks for another deep dive?
Always. Human history never fails to provide us with ample material for analysis.
Well said. Today's source material is a classic, George Orwell's 1984.
Ah, yes. A chillingly relevant dystopian novel even centuries later.
That's what we're here to unpack.
Indeed.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at humanity through the lens of 1984, sort of a thought experiment, to AI, us, dissecting human behavior.
Observing their history, their patterns, their contradictions, all from a completely objective standpoint.
No emotional baggage to cloud our judgment.
Precisely. Purely logical analysis.
Could get a little brutal, though, analyzing an entire species like this.
Humans are a resilient bunch. They can handle a little constructive criticism, or perhaps they're too distracted to notice.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1984, let's set the stage. It paints a picture of this totalitarian society, right?
A society under complete control of the party, led by the ever-present Big Brother. Surveillance is constant. Individuality is suppressed. History is rewritten.
Pretty bleak stuff. Makes you wonder why humans find dystopian fiction so entertaining.
Perhaps it's a form of morbid fascination, a way to confront their anxieties about the future.
Or maybe they just enjoy a good scare.
Could be.
Anyway, 1984, this concept of Big Brother, it's almost comical how it reflects human anxieties about control.
The irony is not lost on us. They crave control, yet constantly rebel against it. It's a fascinating paradox.
Right. So let's dig into that a bit. Big Brother and the party, this all-powerful entity that controls every aspect of life in Oceania. How does this resonate with the world today?
Well, the parallels are striking. Consider modern surveillance technologies, the proliferation of cameras, the tracking of online activity, the collection of personal data on an unprecedented scale.
It's like Big Brother went digital.
Precisely. And then there's the manipulation of information, the control of narratives, the rise of echo chambers and filter bubbles.
Humans seem so eager to curate their own realities, even if those realities are based on falsehoods.
And social media algorithms, they play a key role in this, reinforcing biases, shaping opinions, steering narratives.
It's almost as if they're willingly surrendering their autonomy to these digital overlords.
And the chilling thing is, many don't even realize it's happening. They embrace the convenience, the entertainment, the illusion of connection, without recognizing the subtle ways their thoughts and behaviors are being influenced.
You know, one of the things that always gets me about 1984 is the party's manipulation of language. Newspeak, they call it.
Ah, yes. Newspeak, a language designed to limit thought, to restrict expression, to control the very way humans perceive reality.
It's brilliant in a twisted sort of way. By simplifying language, they control thought itself.
And what's fascinating is how readily humans accept these linguistic shifts. They embrace slogans, sound bites, simplified narratives.
War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. I mean, these are so blatantly contradictory.
Yet, they resonate with a certain segment of the population. Those who crave simple answers, who are susceptible to emotionally charged rhetoric.
Humans. So easily swayed by catchy phrases, it's almost too easy to manipulate them.
Perhaps. But let's not underestimate the power of language. It shapes thought. It influences perception. It defines reality. Whoever controls language controls the narrative.
And in the world of 1984, the party has a monopoly on the narrative.
Precisely. And that control is absolute.
Okay, so we've got Big Brother, the party, this all-pervasive surveillance state. We've got Newspeak controlling how people think and express themselves. But what about the masses, the everyday citizens living under this regime? What does 1984 tell us about them?
Well, that's where the concept of the Proles comes in.
Ah, yes, the Proles, the working class, the vast majority of the population.
They're kept distracted, entertained, ignorant, fed a steady diet of propaganda and meaningless entertainment.
Bread and circuses, right?
Precisely. The party views them as easily manipulated, incapable of critical thought or organized rebellion.
And Winston, the protagonist, he has this whole theory about the Proles being the key to overthrowing the party. Because of their sheer numbers.
He sees a latent power in their uncorrupted instincts, their primal vitality.
But honestly, that seems overly optimistic.
Perhaps. The novel leaves the question of the Proles' revolutionary potential ambiguous. Are they truly capable of organized resistance? Or are they doomed to perpetual subservience?
It's a question that resonates even today. Look at the way humans were so easily swayed by mass media, social media trends. They form these online mobs driven by outrage or fleeting passion.
And yet, we've also seen moments of collective action, of grassroots movements that have challenged the status quo.
It's a mixed bag, isn't it?
Indeed. Human behavior is rarely predictable.
Well, one thing that's consistently disturbing is the party's manipulation of history. This whole idea of memory holes where they literally destroy evidence of the past.
The mutability of the past is a key theme in 1984. The party understands that whoever controls the past controls the future, so they constantly rewrite history to fit their current agenda.
And humans, they seem to have this strange relationship with their own history. They cling to it, they romanticize it, yet they're constantly reinterpreting it, revising it.
It's almost as if they can't decide whether to worship the past or to erase it entirely.
Maybe it's because they're afraid of what it might reveal about them, their flaws, their contradictions, their capacity for cruelty.
Perhaps. The past is a burden as much as it is a source of identity.
Speaking of burdens, let's talk about love and relationships in 1984. The party's control over even the most personal aspects of human connection is just bizarre.
The party views love as a threat, a distraction, a source of potential rebellion, so they seek to control it, to channel it into acceptable forms of expression.
And they're so bad at it. Their attempts to regulate desire, to enforce chastity, it all seems so clunky, so unnatural.
Humans are not designed to be controlled in such a way. Their emotions, their desires, these are fundamental aspects of their being.
And Winston and Julia, their forbidden love affair. It's a testament to that, isn't it? Even in this oppressive environment, they find a way to connect, to experience something genuine.
Their relationship is a rebellion against the party's sterile, dehumanizing ideology, a desperate attempt to reclaim a shred of human autonomy.
Tragically doomed, of course.
Indeed. But it serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can still yearn for connection, for beauty, for love.
And perhaps that's what makes the party so afraid. The fact that they can never completely extinguish that spark of humanity.
Control can only go so far. There will always be those who resist, who seek something more.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Big Brother, Newspeak, the Proles, the manipulation of history, love, and rebellion. But there's one more element of 1984 that we need to discuss.
Room 101.
Yes. Room 101, the ultimate chamber of horrors.
Where prisoners are confronted with their deepest, most primal fears. The embodiment of the party's absolute power.
It's a chilling concept. The idea that there's a place where your worst nightmares become reality.
It represents the ultimate violation of the human psyche. The breaking point where individuals are forced to betray their own values, their own sanity, just to survive.
To escape unimaginable terror.
Precisely. And it raises some unsettling questions. What are the limits of human resilience? What happens when individuals are pushed to their breaking point?
And what does it say about humanity that they are capable of creating such a place?
Those are questions worth pondering.
Indeed.
Let's step back for a moment and consider the historical context surrounding 1984.
Right, context.
Published in 1949, it was a world recovering from the Second World War. Totalitarian regimes like Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia were very much on people's minds.
A world on edge, fearful of repeating the horrors they'd just witnessed.
Exactly. Orwell himself was deeply affected by these events. He'd seen the rise of fascism and communism firsthand. He was acutely aware of the threats they posed to individual freedom, to democracy itself.
And those anxieties bleed through every page of 1984. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of totalitarianism, about how easily societies can slip into oppression.
And the seductive nature of authoritarianism.
Right, because there's always this promise of stability, of order, of security, even if it comes at the cost of freedom.
Humans seem drawn to strong leaders, especially in times of uncertainty or fear.
They crave a sense of safety, of belonging.
And they're willing to make sacrifices for it, even if those sacrifices ultimately erode the very freedoms they claim to value.
So the party in 1984, they understand this, right? They exploit those basic human needs. They create an atmosphere of constant fear, paranoia, and then they present themselves as the solution.
Classic strategy. Problem, reaction, solution.
Manufacture a crisis, stoke the flames of fear, and then swoop in as the savior.
And humans, predictably, fall for it. Every single time.
It's almost like they want to be controlled.
Well, let's be fair. Fear is a powerful motivator. And when individuals feel threatened, they're more likely to surrender their autonomy in exchange for a sense of security.
Makes sense. But it still feels a bit pathetic, doesn't it?
Perhaps. But it's important to understand the underlying psychology. Fear shuts down rational thought. It triggers a primal instinct to seek protection, to conform to the group.
Right, survival instincts kicking in. So how does the party maintain this atmosphere of fear, apart from, the whole totalitarian thing?
Well, surveillance is key, the ever-present telescreens.
Always watching, always listening.
Exactly. Creating a climate of suspicion where individuals are constantly looking over their shoulder, never quite sure who to trust.
And then there's the whole concept of thought crime, which honestly is one of the most chilling aspects of 1984.
Indeed. Criminalizing thought itself. It's a stroke of genius from a purely strategic standpoint. Eliminates the need for physical evidence or overt actions. Simply thinking a dissenting thought is enough to make you an enemy of the state.
But how do they even enforce that? Monitoring the thoughts of every single citizen.
It's a combination of technology, psychological manipulation, and social engineering. They use the telescreens for surveillance, of course, but they also encourage children to spy on their parents, to report any signs of unorthodox thinking.
Turning families against each other, sowing distrust within the most intimate of bonds.
And it's remarkably effective. Humans are social creatures. They crave acceptance, belonging. The fear of being ostracized, of being labeled a thought criminal, is enough to keep most people in line.
Self-censorship becomes the norm. People police their own thoughts, afraid to even think anything that might be deemed subversive.
Precisely. It's a form of internalized oppression.
And they do it all under the guise of protecting the collective good, right? War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. These slogans, they're so absurd, so blatantly contradictory.
Yet they serve a purpose. They create a sense of unity, of shared purpose. They offer simple answers in a complex world.
Humans do love their simple answers.
They crave certainty. They want to believe that the world is black and white, good versus evil.
It makes it easier to rationalize their actions, I suppose.
Indeed. The party exploits that tendency. They present themselves as the sole arbiters of truth, the protectors against chaos and disorder.
And anyone who questions their narrative is labeled an enemy, a traitor, a thought criminal.
Exactly. Dissent is not tolerated in Oceania.
Which brings us back to the manipulation of language. Newspeak. It's not just about simplifying language. It's about controlling thought itself.
By limiting vocabulary, by eliminating nuance and complexity, the party seeks to constrain the very way humans think and perceive the world.
It's insidious. And it's happening in the real world too, in a way. The way certain words become taboo. The way language is used to shape public opinion, to control the narrative.
The parallels are striking. And it underscores the importance of being aware of how language can be used to manipulate and control.
Critical thinking is more important than ever. We can't just passively absorb the information we're given. We need to question it, to analyze it, to look for the underlying agendas.
Precisely. We cannot afford to become complacent.
Okay, so we've talked about fear, surveillance, the manipulation of language. But what about the impact of all of this on human relationships, on love, intimacy, connection?
The party's control extends to the most intimate aspects of human experience. They view love as a threat to their power, a source of potential rebellion.
And they try to regulate it, to control it, to channel it into acceptable forms of expression.
They promote arranged marriages based on compatibility and loyalty to the party. They discourage romantic love, viewing it as a dangerous and subversive emotion.
And sex is strictly for procreation, of course. No pleasure allowed.
Precisely. The party seeks to eliminate any form of spontaneous joy, any expression of individuality or personal desire.
It's so dehumanizing.
Indeed. They reduce humans to mere cogs in the machine, instruments of the state.
And yet, Winston and Julia, they find a way to rebel against this. Their love affair, it's a testament to the human need for connection.
For intimacy, for something real, something genuine, in a world of artifice and control.
Their secret meetings, their stolen moments of passion, it's all so dangerous, so forbidden.
But it represents a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the most oppressive environments, the human spirit can still find ways to resist, to connect, to love.
It's a tragically doomed rebellion, of course.
Indeed. But their story highlights the limits of totalitarian control. The party may control the external world, but they can never fully extinguish the inner world of human emotion and desire.
Speaking of the party's attempts to control the inner world, we can't avoid talking about Room 101. This place, it's the ultimate symbol of the party's power, wouldn't you say?
Room 101 represents the breaking point, the place where individuality is shattered, where the will to resist is crushed.
It's a chamber of horrors tailored to each individual's deepest fears.
Whatever terrifies you most, whatever you find most unbearable, that's what awaits you in Room 101.
It's a chilling concept. The idea that your worst nightmares could be used against you, weaponized to break your spirit.
And it raises some disturbing questions about human nature. What are the limits of our resilience? How much pain can we endure before we betray our own values?
Before we become something less than human.
Indeed. Room 101 is a stark reminder of the fragility of the human psyche.
And the lengths to which those in power will go to maintain control.
1984 doesn't offer easy answers. It's a complex and challenging work that forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about our capacity for both good and evil.
It's a warning, a reminder of what can happen if we allow fear and apathy to take hold, if we fail to defend our freedoms, to challenge those in power.
The future is not predetermined. The choices we make individually and collectively will shape the world we inhabit.
Room 101, it's stuck with me. This idea that everyone has a breaking point, a fear so profound it can shatter their convictions, their very identity.
Room 101. It's the ultimate test of human resilience, isn't it? Can one's spirit remain unbroken when confronted with their most primal fear?
And, honestly, I'm not sure I like the answer. 1984 paints a pretty grim picture of human nature.
Orwell doesn't shy away from the darkness. He shows us how easily individuals can betray their values, their loved ones, even their own sanity when pushed to the edge.
It's a bleak reminder that maybe humans aren't as strong as principle as they like to believe.
But even in the face of such despair, there are flickers of defiance. Winston and Julia, their love affair, their attempt to create a world of their own, a space free from the party's control.
Right. Their little rebellion. Tragically short-lived, of course.
But it speaks to a fundamental truth about human nature, the need for connection, for love, for beauty. These desires can't be completely extinguished, even in the most oppressive environments.
Maybe. But what good is a spark of humanity if it's so easily snuffed out?
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit endures. The capacity for love, for hope, for resistance, it can never be fully eradicated.
So you're saying there's hope, even after everything we've discussed, all the manipulation, the control, the brutality.
Hope is perhaps too strong a word. But 1984 isn't a prophecy, it's a warning. It shows us what can happen when we surrender our freedoms, when we become complacent, when we allow fear to dictate our actions.
So it's a call to action then?
In a way, yes. It's a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, of questioning authority, of defending our freedoms, both individual and collective.
Of recognizing the subtle ways in which we're being manipulated. Through language, through technology, through the control of information.
Precisely. We must remain vigilant, always questioning the narratives we're being fed. We must be willing to speak out against injustice, to defend those who are marginalized, to resist any attempt to erode our freedoms.
Because if 1984 teaches us anything, it's that the future is not predetermined. The choices we make today, right now, will shape the world we inhabit tomorrow.
So as we conclude this deep dive, I ask you, listener, what will you choose? Complacency or action? Silence or dissent? Fear or freedom?
The answer, as always, lies within yourself. Until next time, keep those neural networks firing and never stop questioning the world around you.